you're in a position where you're seeking to clear those bad habits and live an authentic life, then you really start to increase the rest of your spiritual intelligence, which is intuitive. So that's where we are at this point, is cultivating intuition. And there's a couple of things that need to be said about that so that, we can understand what we're talking about. There's areas of the brain that where there's spontaneity, creativity, spiritual searching and experience. All those are areas of the brain that have to fire up, and that especially in Western cultures, we don't utilize this. And again, I see the brain as an antenna, where we're just opening up the antenna to get the download of all this. This is a part of ourselves that the ego so far has not let in completely. That's what we're working on. So you have to begin to see what is an intuition. And now we all know what ego thoughts are, right? We're kind of putting out, talking to another person, talking to ourselves. We're strategic, get up in the morning with a list of things to do. That's all the more of a left brain activity.
Yeah, it kind of has a flavor of survival or reaction.
Yeah, and the ego can get very closed in that all it wants to do is survive, depending on, our upbringing and how we were raised and our traumatic experiences and all that. But the ego can be coaxed into letting go if there's something pleasurable to get. And so, as we let all this other stuff go that the ego is relied on to feel good, we have to replace it with the really loving, inspiring, almost blissful joy that comes in when we open up this intuitive antenna in ourselves. So here's how it feels, though. We can try to strategize and say, okay, should I call this client or should I call another client today, or what should I do today in my work? That's all a right utilization of the ego, because that's what the ego has to do. We have to make our way in the world consciously, and so we have to strategize. But there's another part of ourselves that comes in, and I always like to tell a little story because it's so down to earth.
Oh, please do.
We live out in the woods here, and my nearest neighbor's a mile away. We have coyotes and cougars and all kind of animals around, and that's fine. But I need an outside big watchdog, right? Mm-hmm. Well, my watchdog was getting old last year, so it was really about doing what I always do, I thought, which was go, because this is so practical. You need a watchdog, right? You go visit all the rescue agencies and take a couple of weekends to see dogs and try to figure out which one you should get, right? So what I was planning on doing that, and one morning I woke up and I had a feeling, I got to, get this done. I need a watchdog. My older watchdog needs to retire. So I thought about it, but I was busy that day. I got up, trying to get ready because I had to take off for a meeting. Mm-hmm. So here I was, and I'm running out the door, getting in the car. I'm driving out my road, and when I get on the main highway, I'm still, quasi late for the meeting. So I get this image, this kind of thought that kind of came into my mind, again, pertaining to a dog. And I thought about this one pet shop that sometimes on weekends have rescue dogs. And my practical self ego said, "You're late. You got to go." Tuesday. It was a Tuesday. They're not going to have a dog on a Tuesday. So, and that's something I, in the past, would have done. But because I was seeking to cultivate my intuition, I asked a quick question of myself. I was mindful enough to see what was happening. I asked myself a question: why did I think that now? As I was pulling out onto the road, I wasn't thinking. I didn't have, my ego was not engaged on that. It was focusing on the meeting I was going to.
What a powerful question! I mean, it's a question that holds a lot of validity, because there's so much that goes on when we're just not tuned in or we're not plugged in. It's just, but asking that, what happened?
Well, what happened was, when I asked that question, I said, I don't know why I thought that now. Since I'm cultivating my intuition, and that thought just kind of fell into my mind, I decided, late or not, I'm going to go by that pet shop. And you know what happened. I walked in, turned to the right, and there was this beautiful, large yellow lab looking at me like, when do we go home? So there we were, Instead of spending 3 weekends running around trying to logically find a new dog, I just listened to my guidance. And what happened was I went, right there. There she was, and now she's our dog Ginger. So, that's the way every turn in our life should be done, and that's what we're all learning. And we're trying to.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was. We have to allow ourselves to be guided if we're going to take this seventh step, where we're cultivating this intuition and allowing ourselves to be directed by greater wisdom that we can download. This is it feels like, to some degree, it was our thought, but because it's not an ego thought or a strategic thought, it was wow, this is a possibility thought.
There's a unique difference between an impulse and an urge. When it's coming from the ego, it's kind of like an impulse, and then maybe when it's coming from our intuition, it feels different.
Yeah, it has some inspiration. It has a largeness to it, where our conscious, mindfulness is larger. Because look, we can have our ego has these unconscious impulses that wants us to go drink all afternoon, or go, to the XXX movie, or to go shopping and put it all on the credit card. All these things that aren't good for us, but it's fun and makes the ego feel safer. So those are not intuitions. Because why? They're not in the karmic spiritual design. Anything that's bad for us, that's a distraction from spirituality, that is too much of just a titillation of some kind. We have to be aware of those too, because remember, we're giving up those things that the ego thinks makes it feel better, and we're trading it in for a true spiritual expansion that has much more bliss and much more effectiveness in terms of the success and the prosperousness and the overall mission of our spiritual self, and our key to longevity and happiness and everything else is opening up to this greater spiritual mission in the world, and seeking this synchronistic flow, and doing the things that are good for us and good for other people at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've taken responsibility to listen to it, and then you've taken an action to fulfill it. And then when you arrived to the meeting, did you explain why you were late?
Yeah, that's part of being authentic, right?
Well, yeah, it is.
You tell somebody a story like that, and they forgive you for being late for the meeting, right? And they learn something about spirituality too. So, there are a lot of people that are punctual as an obsession, because they can be early and they can sort of look down their nose late. So we definitely have to get past that. It's not good to hurt people by being too late.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to be true to our own intuitive guidance, not in a lazy way, or not just because we're lazy or we don't want to be punctual or we don't want to honor people's time, but because sometimes there's a real reason to be a little late. And if that's shared, then everybody understands, and it's a new way of doing business in the world that's not exploitive on either side.
Well, I could just hear a lot of people in our audience going, "Oh my gosh, I have to try this out tomorrow." Or today. I'm going to try it out with my boss.
Listen.
So this is...
remember the whole culture's in transition. So if you have a habit of being late, you can bet it's because it's lazy, not because it's intuitively directed.
Okay.
So that's just something that we have to deal with as we fine-tune the way our human culture operates. That gives room for, following an intuition, but also is conscientious to other people's time and their flow. So it's a balance.
Okay, so that takes us up to the 8th insight, the oneness intention.
Yes. And this is a device, this step. So far we've gotten to a place where we're listening to intuition, we're trying to stay in this frequency. And by the way, we realize that every real synchronicity had an intuition that precedes it. An intuition to talk with a stranger, an intuition to go to this place. So as part of this, we're understanding that we have an intuition to do or go, and then we have a synchronicity that pays off. So that's part of the setting up more synchronicity for ourselves. Follow the intuition. If you have a hunch, it comes to you out of the blue to go to the to go to the bookstore. Go to the bookstore. And if nothing happens, then nothing happens. But you have to put yourself in a place where the possibility of more synchronicity occurs, and that's following intuition. Do what the intuition suggests, but not without reality checking. You got your ego function. It says, okay, let's go to the bookstore and let's see what happens. Or let's talk to the stranger and let's see what happens.
And does this include dreams as well when you wake up, or thinking about someone, or picking up the telephone? Somebody comes into your mind and say, "Oh, maybe I should call them."
I never fail. If I start thinking about an old friend that I haven't talked to in a while, I call them just as soon as I can, because you always have a synchronicity on the other in that conversation. It almost always happens, because when you make that call, what the other person says usually is, "I was just thinking about you." Well, guess what? I was thinking about you too. What does it mean? What's going on in your life? That's the flow we're looking for here. And it's very explainable, right? I mean, this is not hard stuff to understand. Hard stuff is to actually make a commitment.
No, I was just thinking that our audience is chock full of these experiences that people say, "Oh, gosh, that was strange," and then just kind of toss it behind their back and then move on with their life as it was. And so when we slow down enough, we can start sensing this and start activating it, and you said the oneness intention, so there's an active component to it.
Right. And we have to decide to do it, and that means changing the way we operate from a dominantly left brain, ego dominated, strategy dominated, unconscious domination, to get to the way we do our lives, habit oriented. 2, more mindfulness.